some women never raise their voice, never beg for attention, never chase a man through the noise of the world. And yet, they live rent-free in his mind, long after the conversation has ended, long after the last glance was exchanged. It's not magic. It's not a game. It's something deeper, a kind of quiet resonance that seeps beneath the skin, into the places he doesn't show to anyone. The kind of influence that feels almost dangerous, because it doesn't demand him to stay, and yet, it makes leaving feel impossible. You see, there are triggers a man will never confess. The silent ones. The ones that do not announce themselves, but awaken in the smallest moments. The way she pauses before answering. The way her eyes hold him, but never grip him. The way she seems to live in a world he can't fully enter, but desperately wants to. A man may think his attraction is simple, physical, predictable, but the truth is, there are forces inside him, old memories, unspoken wounds, that whisper to him when she is near. She becomes not just a woman, but a mirror, a reminder, a challenge, and a mystery all at once. The obsession does not happen when she floods him with affection. It blooms in the spaces she leaves untouched, in the silence where his imagination begins to roam, in the uncertainty where his ego loses control. She is not cold. She is not unkind. She simply understands that desire grows in the distance, in the shadows, in the places where his mind must wander to find her. And so, without trying, she becomes the dream he cannot wake from, the unanswered question, the unfinished sentence, the scent that lingers in an empty room long after she's gone. Men do not speak of this. They will not tell you that their strongest cravings come from the women they could never fully hold, because to admit it would be to admit that they are powerless against something they cannot name. But here, in the stillness between heartbeats, the truth waits for you to see it, and once you do, you will never have to chase again, because the right man will already be running toward the mystery you have become. It begins not with a grand moment, not with a confession, not even with an obvious spark. It begins when his mind, without realizing, starts circling back to her. At first, he doesn't notice it. The thought of her slips in between the spaces of his day, like water seeping into the cracks of stone. A word she said, "Thikos." The way she turned her head, and let her hair fall just so. The slight delay before she answered, as if she were weighing the weight of his question. These things do not shout, they whisper. And men, though they often claim to love what is loud, are undone by what is soft. He begins to watch her without meaning to, not in the obvious way, not in the way that makes her feel hunted, but in the way a man notices a candle across the room. The flame, not bright enough to blind him, yet impossible to look away from. And here is the first truth. The quiet pull is born from her self-possession, from the sense that she does not need to take from him to feel complete. It unsettles him, because he has been taught, often without words, that his value to a woman is measured by how much she needs from him. But here she is, and she stands before him whole, not leaning in to draw warmth from his fire, but carrying her own flame, steady, untouchable. The moment she becomes a mystery is the moment he realizes he cannot quite define her. Her presence is not predictable. Her moods are not arranged for his comfort. Her interest in him is not desperate. It's deliberate, measured, and sometimes withheld. And in that withholding, something inside him stirs. Not irritation, not rejection, but hunger. You see, a man's ego loves certainty. It loves to know where it stands. It loves to believe it has already won. But when a woman moves through his life like a tide, sometimes near, sometimes far, without explanation, his ego loses its anchor. And when that happens, the mind begins to chase, even when the body does not. She is not playing a game. She is simply living in alignment with her own rhythm, her own inner compass. And because she is not bending it to him, he bends toward her. There is a danger in this. For a man who has only known women who center their lives around him, this kind of woman feels unsettling. She mirrors back to him the truth that he is not the axis of her world. And in that mirror, He sees something he cannot control. It's what the ego craves most. And the moment it slips away, the mind begins to search for ways to get it back. This is where obsession is born. He begins to wonder, who is she when she's not with me? What fills her thoughts when I am not around? Why does she not give all of herself the moment I want it? And each unanswered question is a thread he follows deeper and deeper into her presence, until he is no longer aware of how much she occupies him. But here is the truth. This quiet power she holds is not about beauty, not about seduction. It's about an inner life so rich that even he, with all his confidence, wonders if he will ever be invited all the way in. A man may never admit this. He will not say that the women who stay in his memory are the ones who never gave him the whole map. He will not confess that the endless horizon, the idea that there is more to her than he will ever touch, is what keeps him awake at night. And so, he returns to her again and again, sometimes in body, sometimes only in thought, drawn by the same silent current, the same unseen gravity, a force she does not create, but simply allows, because she knows that the man who is worth her will not run from the unknown. He will move toward it, even if it feels like danger, even if it asks him to step into the part of himself he has kept in the dark. And in this space, where he cannot hold her entirely, he becomes the one held by a fascination that does not fade, by a longing that has no name, by the quiet knowledge that she could vanish at any time. There comes a moment. It is not marked by fireworks or confessions. It is marked by silence. A silence that doesn't feel empty. It feels full of questions, of glances, of attention that neither names. She sits across from him, perhaps in a cafe, perhaps in the dim light of evening. And she is not trying to fill the space with words. She lets the quiet breathe, as though she trusts that what is unsaid might speak louder than anything else. For most men, silence is unsettling. It forces them inward. It removes the easy shelter of noise. And in that stillness, he begins to hear things inside himself he has ignored. This is where the second layer of pull begins, because in her presence, he feels both exposed and safe. Not safe because she coddles him, safe because she sees him without asking him to perform. He is not used to this. He is used to women who try to win his attention, who decorate their words to match what they think he wants to hear. She offers no such disguise. Her eyes meet, steady, unhurried, and he feels something almost dangerous, like she can see beyond his practiced charm, like she notices the fractures he tries to hide. It is here that projection begins its quiet work, for in her mystery, he begins to place pieces of himself, the parts he has lost, the parts he wishes he could reclaim. She becomes not just a woman, but a mirror. And mirrors, when they are true, can both enchant and terrify. Some men will run from such a mirror because it demands they see themselves without the armor. But others will lean in closer, hungry to catch another glimpse, even if it unsettles them. She knows, without strategy, that her power is not in chasing, but in being. Not in proving her worth, but in living it. She doesn't need to convince him, because the deeper truth is, the man is already convincing himself. He starts to think of her in moments that surprise him, while speaking to someone else, while lying awake at night, while walking through a crowded street. Her image, her voice, her stillness, slips into the edges of his awareness and lingers. And with each appearance, his mind adds weight to the connection, not because she has given more, but because she has not given it all. There is a paradox here. The less she chases, the more he feels the need to follow. The more she remains rooted in her own world, the more he wants to be invited into it. It is not manipulation. It is the natural gravity of someone who does not orbit another, but instead carries their own center. Yet, with every pull, there is also the shadow. Because obsession is not just born from desire. It is born from the discomfort of not knowing, from the ache of uncertainty, from the hunger to resolve a tension that cannot be resolved. He starts looking for clues. In her words, in her expressions, in the way her phone stays face down on the table. Every little thing becomes a possible answer. And yet, the answers never come in the way he expects. This is the third turning point. When he realizes he is no longer in control of how much he thinks of her. She has become a constant rhythm in his mind, even if days pass without her name being spoken. And this is where the danger for him and the quiet power for her truly crystallizes. Because a woman who knows her own worth, who can be present without clinging, who can leave without explaining, holds a kind of freedom that cannot be bought. And freedom is the most intoxicating thing of all. In his world, she is rare. In his mind, she is irreplaceable. In his heart, she is already lodged between longing and surrender. There is a point when her absence speaks louder than her presence ever did. He notices it, not all at once, but in the small, piercing moments. In the pause before he answers a question from someone else. In the way his eyes drift to the doorway, as if she might walk in. In the sound of his own voice, when it feels strangely empty. The world has not changed, but his perception has. Colors feel less sharp, time slower, heavier, and he begins to understand. This is not just attraction. It is an ache, a need for something he cannot name, because it is not about her body, or her smile, or even her words. It is about the space she holds inside him. He does not rush to fill this space. She does not feed his hunger with reassurances or explanations. Instead, she lets it grow. Because she knows, desire, when allowed to breathe, becomes deeper, more consuming. And here, the fourth turning point. He realizes he is chasing not just a woman, but a version of himself he glimpses only when he is with her. A self, less guarded, more alive. A self that feels seen. This is where the obsession sharpens. He begins to replay their moments, not to remember, but to find meaning. The way she tilted her head when he spoke, the pause before she answered, the slight curve of her lips, as if she knew something he didn't. Every detail becomes a map, every memory a clue. And still, she remains just out of reach. She answers when she wishes. She meets him when it suits her rhythm, and she never, not once, asks for more than he is willing to give. Yet somehow he gives more. More of himself than he intended. It is not a game to her. It is simply the way of someone who understands that the deepest connections are not seized. They are allowed to unfold. And so, he waits for the next call, the next look, the next moment she chooses to open the door. And every time, she gives just enough to pull him further in. But there is a truth she holds close. A truth that will shape the ending. That a woman's worth does not depend on whether a man sees it. That her value does not grow or shrink with his attention. That her mystery is not for him to solve, but for her to live. And one day, without announcement, she will simply step away. Not in anger, not in punishment, but in the quiet knowing that she owes nothing to a man's obsession, not even herself. He will feel it like the sudden drop of air, a hollow in the chest, a silence he cannot bear. He will search for her in his days, in the faces of strangers, in the pages of books, in the folds of dreams. But she will have moved on, still radiant, still whole, walking through her own life with the same steady, unhurried grace. And if he ever sees her again, perhaps across a crowded room, perhaps only in memory, he will understand. The woman who walks away in silence isn't weak. She simply sees more. If this spoke to you, if you felt the pull in these words, then stay with this channel. Like, share, and subscribe so that you never miss the moments that shift something deep inside.